Hey everyone, welcome back to the Triple Doink podcast. This is our third time trying to start this podcast now.
Oh man,
So
it's been
hopefully
great.
this time it works. This is episode two, or episode one if you're a programmer. Um,
Oh my, that
yeah,
is a joke no one would understand. Uh,
programmers would.
yeah,
Um, so anyway,
so
um,
bad. It's such a bad joke.
I know. I thought of that just now while resetting my router. Um, Anyway, this is the Triple Doink podcast, and we're back. We recorded one. It's been a little over a week. Now we're recording another one. My name is Ryan, and I'm joined, as always, by my friend Bryce, the Chewbacca to my
you're
Han
gonna okay.
Solo.
You're gonna
And
say it again.
I am. I spoiled that before because I said it in the previous recording, and so it's not a surprise to Bryce anymore. That's what I
Uh,
was going for, but
Mike,
I
you
didn't
know,
have another one queued up.
come on, you
That's the
got it.
No, I can't do it.
Can't do it.
It's just gonna have to be a disappointment, just like the rest of this podcast.
Ah,
Um,
well, don't get so down. We're come on. We're the best. We're the number one
yeah,
podcast based on triple doinks.
yeah. I mean, come to think of it, this is going to be a great podcast because we're going to be talking about all the stuff that's happened since the last time we recorded. Then we're going to be talking about the AFC South and our preview of that division, which is going to be fun because that's the division that Bryce watches the most closely. And then we're going to talk about uh, our music recommendations from last time and make new ones. And the most exciting of all, we're going to debut our first ever segment on this podcast, which is going to be so much fun. I'm looking forward to it. And as I said
Oh
in the
man.
first as I said in the previous recording, I think I'm going to be listening back to this later and just laugh hysterically when this segment starts and all the way until it ends.
I agree. This.
So this should be fun, especially since I'm not going to get to hear it the first time through when we're
You won't.
recording it.
Yeah.
I'll only hear it in the final result,
It'll be as if it never happened until it actually did.
right?
All right.
All right, so let's
Yeah.
jump into
First
the
order
news.
of business.
Yeah, first order of business. We missed an important piece of news last week, which is really only important to us, but it's probably my favorite thing that's happened this offseason. And barring some massive trade involving the Packers, it will remain my favorite thing that's happened this offseason. Um, so, as you know, we are named the Triple Doink podcast,
Are we?
and I think so. And and as I'm sure everyone also remembers, the Bears were eliminated from the playoffs last year when Cody Parkey missed a game-winning field goal attempt that went off the left upright and then off the crossbar and out, hence the double doink.
Yeah.
And we named ourselves the triple doink. So
Take what you will with that.
listeners who are paying attention can probably figure out what that means. But anyway, the best thing that's happened so far this offseason is that the Bears parted ways with Cody Parkey, which was not surprising.
Yeah.
And they brought in a new kicker,
A new
and
face. His last name.
and the this is just it's amazing because it coincides so well with the name of our podcast that the new kicker's name is Chris Blewett.
Oh my god, he's destined to fail. It's
Yeah,
already written in stone. Oh,
I
the
know.
gods
And
have sent upon him with nothing but pain and torment through his whole career.
yeah, his name is the answer to the question, how did the Bears lose on Sunday? Chris blew it.
Chris Blue.
That's, I mean, come on.
It's so good.
It,
Oh man.
anyway, I just,
Yeah,
I'm,
it's necessary. We all can agree that was quite honestly the best news of last week.
yeah, like I said, I can't believe I forgot. That item should have led the news last week, not the Odell Beckham trade.
Yeah, forget about Odell. Who's this man coming to a
Yeah,
has-been franchise that no one's ever cared about?
I
Nah,
mean,
some kicker
as
for the
Bryce,
AFC North team that might not do anything next year. But don't I have
as
them in like
as you
my?
once said, as you once said famously,
Mhm.
why would you want Le'Veon Bell when you have Marlon Mack? In this case, why would you want to talk about Odell Beckham when you can talk about Chris Blewett?
Yeah. Hey, don't diss Marlon Mack like that. I still stand by that for the Colts.
You still stand by that Marlon Mack is a better player than
I
Le'Veon Bell.
stand by if you have Marlon Mack, you don't need to put resources into Le'Veon Bell.
Okay. Well, anyway, let's move on
Mm-hmm.
now from Chris Blewett, which I mean, it's just destiny at this point.
It's oh man,
Uh,
Packer fans
that
have to be relishing in that fact alone.
it made me so happy when I heard that. Um, so the biggest news item from the time since we last did this podcast has to be that the Bengals released Vontez Burfict, and
Yep.
and then a day later he signed with the Oakland Raiders.
I think I really like this for the Oakland Raiders. I actually think that's a fantastic trade for them. And I don't. You can say what you want about Vontez. Uh, what he is a
Well,
really good player. Still, I think
we
he was
we
the
did
best.
say we did say last time, keep this guy as far away from my team as possible in
And
reference to Perfect. Um, so and it's funny that they have acquired both Vontez Burfict and Antonio Brown with the history that those two guys have.
oh man, the locker room is gonna go so boom so fast, and
Oh
I
God,
can't
I
wait.
know. And like
How
we
John
know
Gruden can't control anyone, let alone Antonio Brown and Fontez.
exactly. And we already know that like they're not going to be a good team. They might be decent this year now that they have some better
They
players, but
might play upset. They can play upset right now.
they can play upset, but they're not going to be like a playoff contender.
They
So that's just going to be
they
such a
gotta
toxic locker room.
man. If I'm like just some one of their like corners, right? I don't know the names of either of the cornerbacks for the Oakland Raiders right now off the top of my head. But like,
Let me look it up.
oh man, I cannot like imagine a world where they're happy to go into the locker room after a loss on Sunday because they have to meet Perfect face to face and just act like nothing's wrong. uh, you become the little spoon so fast in that locker room.
Yeah. Um. So the corners for the Raiders. Um. Yeah, Google's not helpful. Um.
Google.
So David Amerson, Sean Smith, DJ Hayden. Those seem to be their guys.
Yeah.
Um.
Um. Really lockdown corners.
Yeah. But I mean, honestly though, like odds at this point that there's like a training camp fight between Burfict and Brown, like how
Eh,
likely how likely is that? I
I
feel
don't
like
think it's as likely as you might think. They play on different sides of the ball.
yeah, so they're playing against each other in practice.
I think that Brown would have a tendency to fight with people that he's playing with more in camp than the people that he's playing against.
Hmm.
Because if you're getting fucked by somebody who you're gonna be who's gonna be on the other side of the ball for you. I don't think you mind as much as if
Yeah.
somebody on your
Well,
team blowing it constantly in practice, and you're just thinking like, is this guy really the guy I have to play with? Come on.
yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens, but honestly, I feel like it's a 50-50 chance that they get into some sort of scuffle during during training camp or practice at some point. I mean, like Burfict has tried multiple times, it seems, to like take Antonio Brown's head off. Like it's just, oh my god, why would anybody want this guy? He's obviously a good football player, but he's a dirty player. I mean,
I
he
mean,
makes he makes Ndamukong Suh look like, I don't know, a guy who follows the rules.
Pac-Man Jones looked like not Pac-Man Jones.
Yeah, and on a side note, what is with the Bengals and always acquiring these guys? I mean,
It's the
like
culture that
over the years, I guess it must be a Marvin Lewis
it was a
thing.
Marvin Lewis thing, and it made it so the Bengals weren't complete dog,
Yeah.
but now it looks
I
like they're
mean,
treading back to a place that they don't want to go.
well, I mean, I guess to the coaching staff's credit, they did release Perfect. So,
They did. The
you know,
second that Marvin Lewis was gone, Perfect was gone.
yeah. I mean, it seems like maybe they are trying to change that culture, which is desperately needed. But
Maybe.
anyway,
But from I don't know if people remember the culture that used to permeate in Cincinnati, which is basically just losers.
yeah.
Nothing but losers.
Well, anybody who's listened to ATN and listened to Chris Wessling's opinion on the Bengals will understand. But anyway, you have anything else to say about Perfect, or should we move on?
No, not really. He's a bonehead guy that knows how to play football that will cost you a game or two in a
Yeah,
season. But
yeah,
he might net you like 3 games in the process. So
yeah. I mean, he fills a need for the Raiders. I mean, they needed a defensive leader. It's just that
he's
he's a
Vontez perfect.
he's a dirty player. But anyway, okay, moving on. And we're sticking with the Bengals. Because this happened after we finished recording the last podcast. This news broke that Tyler Eifert is staying with Cincinnati.
Yeah, I
He
think
was,
that's good for. That's like the only good things that's happened to the Bengals. That's like
yeah,
objectively, you need to keep this guy.
yeah, he was. I was kind of surprised that he's sticking around because he was one
Oh
of the
yeah,
top tight ends on the market. There really isn't much of a free agent tight end group,
he's
and
willingly staying with Tyler Eifert. With wait, I mean Andy Dalton.
I know. I don't know. I was surprised. I mean, I guess it makes sense for him. He's had so many injuries over the years, but I really thought he would try to go to a contender. I thought, the Saints, and we'll get to the Saints in a bit, but
Yeah,
I really thought
they
he
look
would.
quite good. I know that we rank the Saints quite low because we think they're gonna crash, but like they're
I
still
still
looking
I still
proactive.
think that, by the way, but I really thought that um, the Saints were a good landing spot for Eifert, and I
Mm-hmm.
expected him to go there, and they ended up with Jared Cook, which we'll get to in a bit, but you know, I'm just really surprised that Eifert chose to stick around. He obviously, you would think he would have had more of a market.
Yeah. Um. Teams that I think he could have gone to. Rams immediately come
Yeah,
to
the
mind.
Rams could have used a tight end.
Right, that's like the one position on the Rams that I think if you
Even
could
I
upgrade.
mean the Patriots too. I mean,
Yeah,
if they knew that Gronk was going to retire, which they probably
they had
did.
speculations. They could have locked down a guy and sent him on his way. But that could have
Yeah,
been seen as really disrespectful. So I don't really fault them too much. And
nah,
I'm
fair
sure they're
enough.
gonna find somebody anyway. They're the Patriots. They are really good at free agency.
Yeah, they always seem to make the right choice, and when they make the wrong choice, they bail on it when it becomes apparent. Unlike a lot of teams.
Yeah.
Okay, so the now to some bigger free agency news. Um, You know what? It just occurred to me.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on 1 second. Ha! That's funny. I didn't even write it down in my news document, but uh, Clay Matthews is out of Green Bay now.
That is a fact, and that is something that I thought you were going to talk about like immediately.
Yeah, I actually I must have forgotten to write it down, but anyway, I remembered it, of course, and he is now going to be a Los Angeles Ram.
I think the Rams are going to make use of him way more than the Packers did.
Well, yeah,
he
I feel like
he does
Wade
have a
Phillip.
certain skill set
He
that I
has a
think
particular set of
can
skills.
coincide well on the Rams because the Rams do tend to like attract those kind of aging has-beens and
Yeah,
suck what little juice is left in their tank.
yeah, it's a good fit for Clay. I mean, honestly, it's unfortunate. It's going to sting a bit to see him playing for another team,
Eh,
but
but that's just
but
gonna be you remembering the good old days, and the good old days
right.
haven't been a thing for like 5 years.
And the fact is that he was not a good player the last couple of years with the Packers, and it's really time that we moved on. It was time a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that is
And
always depressing though when you have this
it's just
legendary like name that everyone in your fan base just adores, and you just see them deteriorate, and you're like, ah. The fans are kind of the only thing keeping them around. Like, what if he comes back to form just
yeah,
overnight, which never happens?
right. I'm trying to think of one exception to that, but I can't.
There isn't a. They don't exist really, and if they do exist, it's completely extraneous. And there, you can
Well,
see like if you go deep into why they're completely different than everyone else.
yeah. Um, so anyway, Clay Matthews is out, and it's just another one of those McCarthy guys that we're having to get rid of.
Yeah,
Um, and it's something that has to happen. The Packers, just as much as I think the Bengals need a culture change, I think the Packers do too. Um, and it's just been the last few years have just been rough for the Packers. Even before, like, these last 2 years where we missed the playoffs were obviously bad, but even the couple years before that where we were still
you're
in
making the
contention.
playoffs, but it was like, I
Like,
mean,
I mean, we made the NFC Championship 3 years ago, and of course we got blown out by the Falcons. But
and then the previous,
like, we were still relevant in January, but it was rough. Like,
it didn't feel like you were a Super Bowl winning team. It just
no,
felt like you were an Aaron Rodgers run team, and that's why
you could,
that's where the stigma that Aaron Rodgers is so good came from. Really, is that they took the Packers to the NFC Championship.
yeah, exactly. I
That's
mean,
not a.
you could just tell by watching the team that, like, they weren't going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I had that feeling because they were winning games, but
Even like,
they were.
one of my favorite moments as a Packer fan in my life was Mike McCarthy's last playoff win with the Packers, which was the divisional
The Jared
playoff
Cook,
game.
Aaron Rodgers throw.
Yeah, the Rogers to Cook throw that set up the game-winning field goal. And I mean, that was a great game, but even after that, as high as we were, with excitement over the
Yeah,
Packers,
reality struck real hard,
I
real
mean,
fast.
I still knew that we were lucky to get out of that game, and we were going to get killed by the Falcons. And honestly, we were lucky to beat the Giants the previous week. If Odell Beckham hadn't dropped a few passes, we would have
Uh,
lost that game.
didn't you like kind of beat him by like a few scores?
Well, it ended up, I don't remember what the final was. It ended up getting away from the Giants toward the end, but in the first half,
The
the
first half was
Giants
close, but the second half, I thought you guys completely
the
controlled
Giants
the ball.
missed a lot of opportunities in that first
But
half,
anyway, that's
including
3 years.
including Odell Beckham Jr. dropping an easy touchdown. But
Yeah.
anyway, we don't need to dwell on that. The point is
Roll that
that
pass.
the McCarthy era is over, and we're moving on from a lot of those guys. And another one of those guys is Randall Cobb,
Yeah.
and he's out of town now. He is going to Dallas. So, I mean, before I jump in with my thoughts, what do you think about Randall Cobb to the Cowboys?
I believe that he's like one of the most needed pieces for the Cowboys in that they had the worst depth when it came to the receiver position
Hmm.
uh when they started last year. And then they got Amari Cooper, which completely saved their season
Yeah,
from like
absolutely.
their season was going so far downhill and they just got climbed straight out of the gutter so
Hmm.
fast just because of one roster move acquisition. And I think Cobb is a great fit because who did they have? They had like Tavon Austin, right? And
Yeah, they still have Austin. They had Cole Beasley,
Cole beat like
Michael Gallup, who was a rookie last year.
Gallup. I think could be good. I think he'll be fine. But
I think he'll be a good player. And there
uh,
was one other guy who was like supposed to be their outside receiver that just didn't work out for
yeah,
him. But yeah, I mean, they basically just started the season with no wide receivers and were like, yeah, we're good with this. And then after, a 3-5 start, they're like, yep, we need somebody. And they went and acquired Amari Cooper.
they made a really yeah.
Um,
Come over here.
so
Okay,
anyway,
I'll just leave it up there one
um,
sec.
Randall Cobb to the Cowboys. And I don't know. I don't think it's a very good move, honestly.
Really,
It's You know, Randall Cobb is another one of those players like Clay Matthews where it's just been clear that he's past his prime. And
I don't know. I can't remember a season where he had a prime.
no, I mean he was a very productive player for the Packers for a number of years, and he's
I just
he's
never
one of
thought it
my
was. I never
he's
thought
one of
that
my
Randall
favorite.
Cobb was the reason why he was so productive.
Yeah, that could be. But he was one of my favorite players that we've had on our offense over the years. And again, I'm sad to see him go, but it was time. He's a progress stopper at this point.
Randall Cobb is the type of player I think he marks when the I thought that the Packers receiving core started to get pretty bad.
Yeah,
He's the mark of like going from Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson to like Randall Cobb, and the only other guy that was really good was Devontae.
yeah,
Devontae's really good, but that's all
yeah.
because
Well,
Nelson
and I
fell off. Can
like at this point in his career, Randall Cobb's a progress stopper.
yeah,
We have these young receivers who the only way they're going to get better is by
Geronimo
playing.
Allison will be good this year. I guarantee it. There's
I
no
think he
way
will
he's
be.
not. He's either good or he's gone.
I've always liked Geronimo, um, and but yeah, we need other receivers to get playing time, and the only way that they're going to get that is if we get some of these progress stoppers out of the way.
Yeah,
So it's ultimately a good move for the Packers not to bring him back. Um, and by the way, Jordy Nelson also got cut from the Raiders,
I remember that.
and I'm really hoping that the Packers don't do something stupid and bring him back.
He doesn't really add anything to the Packers at this point in his career.
So anyway,
Go where?
um, it's good that they parted with Randall Cobb, and I hope that they don't go and bring back another progress stopper like Jordy. As much as I liked those guys both when they were Packers,
Yeah, it's time to say goodbye. It was
but
time to say it a
here's
while ago, honestly. Cobb hasn't been a good player for quite some time. I think it was just
yeah,
more contracts that kept him
and
around. And
my
Rogers liked
biggest
him.
well, yeah, that's the other factor. My biggest fear whenever a player leaves the Packers is that they're going to be like really good and hurt the Packers, and especially going to the Cowboys, which is a team I really don't like. Um,
There's
that's a
never.
worry for me. But I wanted to bring up this quote because Greg Rosenthal helped to put my mind at ease a little bit on this issue.
Uh huh.
So this is what he said on ATN. He said, "When you're an extremely versatile and tough, smart slot receiver, and the Patriots have no interest in you, to me that's a bad sign." and
I
that
can. I did not.
um so anyway, that kind of I mean, he makes a good point. Randall Cobb seems like the type of player that the Patriots would normally go after, and they didn't even show any interest.
Yeah.
So
I.
anyway, yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm sad to see Cobb and Matthews go, but at the same time, it was it was overdue for them to be out of town. We've got to rebuild.
Yeah. Packers are in the phase where like every they need to be a young team again. That's when they've always been the best. Is when you looked at their roster and they were full of like 20 to 25-year-olds.
Yeah, I know. Like when we had Brett Favre in his last couple years with the Packers, we were the youngest team in the NFL, even though we had the oldest quarterback.
Yeah. And they were fantastic.
Yeah, they
Like
were. You know,
that's I've always
they
thought
made a
that
run.
that's
They made a
when the
run at the
Packers were the
Super
best.
Bowl, Favre's last year with the Packers,
I mean, did he
and
farve it? Yeah, but I mean,
yeah. Well, and I mean they remained a young team.
yeah,
Into
even when they won the Super Bowl, weren't they still really young? Even
they
though they
were.
had
I mean,
Donald, didn't they have Donald Driver still?
yeah, they had Driver and they had Charles Woodson, but those were really the two veteran leaders on that team.
Which
There weren't really any others that were older guys.
yeah, they need some older guys like that, but that's it. I think.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we can move on from Randall Cobb.
Yeah.
Um, there are a couple of other Packers that have moved on though that I want to talk about. Um, One I just want to mention briefly, and I only include this news item because it involves my team and your team. Jake Ryan, Packers linebacker, is going to the Jaguars.
Hell yeah.
You have any thoughts
I
on that?
actually thought Jake Ryan was pretty good. I didn't,
Yeah,
and I think that a player like Jake Ryan going to a defense that is as you know, there's they can be emotional, but the Saxonville defenses with people like you got Calais Campbell, which I think is still one of the best uh, defensive linemen you could ever have on a team. He is
sure.
so good to have on an offense or defense. Uh, you got players like that, and it doesn't even matter who else is lined with him because I think if you just get a bunch of young guys, he's just gonna lead them to being fantastic.
Yeah,
I can't
Jake
remember.
Ryan.
Yeah.
I think Jake Ryan's a good addition for the defense. He provides some depth.
Why did they not
Um,
keep him? I thought that the Packers kind of liked Jake Ryan still.
well, he was injured all of last year.
Ah,
Um,
yeah, I'll
so
do it.
who knows if he's still the same guy. But I think he just got overshadowed by Kyler Fackrell and Blake Martinez and a couple of other
Yeah,
young
I thought
linebackers that they
Martinez
like.
was good as well.
I think that it just wasn't financially worth it to them to keep him around. Which I mean, I don't know. He's another one that I liked him, but I'm not like super upset to see him go.
Yeah, I can see that.
Um, okay. I have two more bits of Packer news. One of them I'm going to save for our segment later. Um, but the other one, um, Bashad Breeland is we signed him midway through last year when our secondary was in horrible shape with injuries, and he is heading out of Green Bay. He is going to Kansas City, um, where they certainly need some players in that secondary.
Yeah, Kansas City has been kind of cleaning house with all the old guys.
Yeah, that and they were another team that needed it after that AFC Championship loss, where they really just couldn't slow down the Patriots at all
Then
throughout that
yeah,
game. They needed to shift their defensive culture a lot. Um, so I would have, again, Breeland's another one that I liked what he did when he was with the Packers last season. He was one of the, he was a veteran who just played solidly, but I can understand why they're not bringing him back, because they want uh, some of these younger guys to get the playing time.
yeah.
Obviously Jair Alexander is your number one, but they have a lot of corners that I think
King.
they like. They have Kevin King, and Josh Jackson's the other one. And I think that they believe in those three guys, so it doesn't really make sense to have Breland around.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
don't
the
think
other
they.
one, Josh Jones, by the way, is the safety whose name I couldn't think of last time. He's one that they really like too, and that was part of the reason that they traded Clinton Dix away last year, was they wanted Jones to get playing time.
I can't remember a single play with Josh Jones on the field though.
Well,
Like I can't remember him ever being impactful.
well, yeah, he
Is
he
he
made
just a
some good
facilitator?
plays. I don't really. Well, I mean, he was a rookie last year, so and then he got hurt, so he missed a lot of games. But when he was on the field, I was impressed by a lot of the plays he made in coverage. Um, I was excited for him. Chris Wessling said some glowing things about him. Um, so if Wes is praising him, Um, but anyway, I hopefully he does some good things in year two, and I think he will if he stays healthy. Um, but that's safety talk. We
And
don't want to talk about safeties yet. Um, it's not time yet to talk about safeties.
it's
So,
not safety talk yet.
oh boy, um,
The safety shuffle.
the safety carousel. We're not there yet. Um, I want to move on to the piece of news that I'm sure you want to talk about. The Los Angeles Rams signed Blake Bortles to back up Jared Goff.
Oh yeah, backup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
backup.
Yeah, that's why
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to get the best quarterback of all. Dude, that's a great. He, I think, fits the offense in Los Angeles really well because I don't think Jared Goff is one of these guys, much like Blake Bortles, where his skill set is very like it doesn't really wow the eyes. Whenever I watch Jared Goff, I'm like, oh, he's a quarterback, I
A
guess.
polite way of saying he's not a good quarterback.
It's not. He's a good leader. I think Goff does leadership
Honestly, I
role
I
fine.
kind of agree with your point about fit. Like, if anybody is going to fix Blake Bortles, I think it'll be Sean McVay. But that said, I don't think he's fixable at this point.
He's fixable. He's still young. He's relatively young. He's on his last few years to prove it, but
His last few years of prove it were a few years ago.
yeah,
And then
and
the
he made
Jaguars
the
signed him
NFC
to a big contract
AFC
anyway.
championship. All right. He was a touchdown
He
away from the
didn't get
Super
them to
Bowl,
the AFC Championship. Their defense and Leonard
but
Fournette brought
he
them to the
got them
AFC.
there as the leader on offense because he's
No,
the
Leonard
best.
Fournette was the leader on offense.
That's a lie. You know it. That's why I
Oh,
thought Nick
Bryce.
Foles was a good trade for Jacksonville because much like Bortles, like the thing about Bortles is that he's always really confident in himself. It seems
I
he's
mean,
somebody who's always like, "Yeah, I'm the best, of course. Why would I
I
not
don't
be?"
understand how he can be so confident after all of the terrible play he's all of the terrible
You
quarterback
see,
play that
it's
he's
people like you that
experienced.
keep him up because he knows that if people keep talking about him like that, he's the best.
Oh my god. I honestly can't tell sometimes if you're joking about Blake Bortles or if you're serious. Oh
I know
man.
I'm serious about him most of the time. What I will say is that I do overplay it because it's fun too. I mean, above all else, but what I really enjoy about Bortles is what he is as a leader, and I think that uh if it weren't for, I mean, I think Jacksonville actually was the most unstable team last year, not the Steelers.
Yeah,
I
I,
think,
I would actually tend to agree. Yeah,
yeah, and I think that really started to happen when Bortles started to get benched.
yeah.
That really, and I think that was because the one leader on the field was taken off the field, and that's the worst thing he could have done. Because Fournette was
By
just
the
being a
point
hothead
by the
the
point that
entire.
they benched Bortles, it didn't matter what they did.
I mean, I still say that's the worst decision they made all season. No, they still had a chance to make the playoffs,
No,
but they were a
all
type of
right.
team that like they needed everything to start to align pretty quickly. But they had all the pieces. Did they have the pieces to make the playoffs? Yes. They just didn't want to work with each other.
Yeah, I mean they still have a good roster.
They have a really good roster. I think they have one of the better rosters that is
I
in the
mean,
league. They just don't have any weapons on offense other than Fournette.
if John DeFilippo can maximize Nick Foles, then I think that they'll be right back in the mix this year.
They
You
need a
know, they
receiver though. They need a talented receiver in the draft. They need to get this Dom Clef guy
yeah, they do they could do with some weapons.
because that's the only way that you're gonna have DK DK Metcalf. That's his name. That's the only way that Foles is gonna be able to be good on a roster is if he has people to throw to make these 50-50 plays that turn into 80-20s because their receivers are just so good.
Yeah.
That's why I think DK Metcalf needs to go to the Jaguars this season. We don't need another tight end. People are. That is what I've seen with every prediction because we have the 7th overall pick. Nobody drafts. No one has predicted that DK Metcalf goes before. So I'm saying if he's still up by then, you definitely need to go for them with the lack of depth at wide receiver in Jacksonville.
Hmm.
Ugh, that's all you need.
Well, enough enough Bortles and Jags talk for the moment. Um, there's another quarterback move that actually is important. Unlike that one, Ryan Fitzpatrick
Ugh.
to the Dolphins.
Hey, Fitzmagic. Oh man, that team is gonna be so bad. I love it.
I,
Oh,
you
they're
know,
gonna be terrible, but it's
we were
gonna be so
asking
much fun
last
to
time
watch.
because we talked about the Dolphins trading away Tannehill, and we were asking, what exactly
Huh.
are they doing?
Well, they're getting Fitzmagic and October,
Yeah,
Brocktober. They don't have Brocktober anymore, but they got Fitzmagic. So
yeah,
fair play.
yeah.
They'll win
I mean,
4 or 5 games. Good job.
Fitzpatrick is not a bad player. I don't think. He's had
He's
a lot
good
of
at what
ups
he
and
is, and that
downs.
is if defenses don't read him right, he's gonna give you 450 yards and 4 touchdowns. But he's so easy to read, right?
Yeah,
He's an incredibly easy player to read. So the second he's figured out, it's like, well, 4 interceptions, benched the next week.
yeah,
Like because you know what you get with Fitzpatrick. That and what you get is not a Super Bowl winner. You get someone who can snag you a few wins and save your coaching position, maybe. Like I think that's what it is at the end of the day. People are trying to just save their jobs by getting Fitzpatrick in the building.
yeah. Well, what's interesting though is that looking at the Miami wide receiver group, it's actually kind of similar to the group that Fitzpatrick had some success with last year in Tampa. They don't have the
I
Mike Evans
They don't have
really.
Mike Evans and they don't have Deshaun Jackson. They have Devontae Parker, Kenny
No, they don't
Stills,
have. Well, they have the piece that I'm excited to see what they do with is Jakeem Grant because
Grant.
the guy can fly if he's the same guy I'm thinking of.
Jakeem Grant. Uh, That team has so many weird weapons that are just.
I
That
mean,
team
yeah,
is so like
when
it's
Albert Wilson and Kenny Stills are your top wide receivers, you know.
primordial soup. You know,
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's just a
So, I
big
mean,
soup.
we know that the Dolphins are going to be bad, but they'll be fun, I think, with
They
Fitzpatrick
will
at
be fun.
least.
I will love watching the Dolphins on Sunday, but I will
Yeah.
know they will be a terrible team.
Yep. That's why I kind of like the move for them is that
What?
like we know that they're going to be
I know.
bad, but at
I'll
least they'll
get
be
it.
fun to watch. So I like bringing in Fitzpatrick. If you know that this is
Yeah.
going to be a year, you know, if you know you're not going to draft a quarterback this year and you're playing to draft one next year, then this is a good move.
I would agree.
All right.
And it's possible that they're gonna try to tank a few seasons and wait until the guy, Clemson, right? The Clemson QB.
Yeah, whatever his
They
name
might
is.
declare. They might wait till he declares. And hey, fair play, I guess.
Yeah.
You can
He's
bleed money
he's gonna end up with the Giants though. I mean, just you watch. The Clemson kid is going to the Giants.
here. I mean, there are so many teams that are terrible that don't know what they're doing that might just get. I don't know, man. It's a thing.
All right. Well,
Do we want to start a
um,
segment now?
no, but we've got more other news to get through first.
I see.
So we've got a few retirements. The most notable is Rob Gronkowski.
The Gronk.
Yeah, I mean, what else is there to really say about him? Hall of Famer, um, changed the game, best tight end I've ever watched. Um,
Yeah, I can't
super.
think of a better tight end than him.
I mean, like I watched Antonio Gates when he was in his prime too, and I saw the tail end of Tony Gonzalez's prime, and you know those guys were fantastic, but Gronk really changed the game. He changed what a tight end can be,
Yeah,
and
I've
I mean he's a Hall of Famer, no doubt.
undisputed Hall of Famer. I think he might be first ballot.
Yeah, and I'm it's just I guess as somebody who hates the Patriots, I'm happy to see him go, but as somebody who just admires
Football, good football.
good football and great athletes like Gronk, it's sad to see him go. And I wish that he
Yeah,
could have kept going, but his body kind
dude.
of
He
is
literally
starting to
had
give up
like
on him.
his arm. Every time I watch him on the field towards the tail end, I'm just thinking, man, he has literally like plastic and styrofoam holding him together right now
Yeah.
on the field. Oh my god.
And it's nice for him that he gets to retire on top.
Yeah. It's
You know,
always good
he
to go out with a bang, but what I always like telling players, what a good thing to tell a lot of them is that go until you can't. Just keep going until you're at the bottom and no one will hire you. No one wants you. Because and the reason why is because the rush of playing the game you'll never have again. So
mm,
I think a lot of players do mope in the fact that they're like, "Oh, what could have been? What if I was another great tight end? What if I had a second leg of my career again?" I mean, if he wants to retire, that's him, but I will say he was getting up there. Yeah. He might
yeah.
have I don't think that I would fault him for retiring this early. Quote unquote early.
Well,
It's not really early for him.
and it's funny that you mentioned that the whole play until nobody'll take you thing, because another player retired recently who kind of went that route, and that's Jeremy Maclin.
Yeah?
Um, he was
He
out of
was
football last year.
still in the league
Well, no, he didn't play last year
because
because nobody would have him, and now he's officially announced his retirement. Um, but Jeremy Maclin was a really fun one. I liked him a lot
he
early
was
in his
fun to
career when
watch.
he
He
first
was
started
great.
with Philadelphia.
I
When
remember him
when
on
it was
Philly. Where else was he at? Tampa?
No, he went to Kansas City and then spent
Yes.
I think 1 year in Baltimore.
Yeah.
But he he was a really fun one. When the Eagles had him and Deshaun Jackson and Michael Vick, I mean that
That
was just
team was so much fun to watch. I still
they were
remember the
just
Redskins game on Monday night.
I remember that too. I watched that one live. I know exactly what game you're talking about.
Everyone, there were so many memorable plays from that. The Redskins. Was it a defensive? Yeah, it was a defensive tackle who just fell on the ground and just didn't want to get back up,
Yeah.
chasing
Well, and
Michael Vick.
we mentioned the other super memorable game from them last week was the Miracle at the Meadowlands Part 2. The
Yeah,
they had a because what is often lost, everybody always remembers the punt return at the end, but what is often lost is that that was a fantastic comeback. I mean, I believe they were down like 21 points in the fourth quarter,
it was.
and they came back. Michael Vick led a charge, and that's one of the most fun teams I've ever watched. When the Eagles had that offense,
Michael Vick is one of the most entertaining players of all time, and
absolutely.
it is his fucking career
And
path.
when you partner him with receivers who can really stretch the field like Jackson and Macklin,
Yeah, I mean he's
it's
just
just
buying time. He creates so many seconds.
like you just watching that team, you just never knew what was going to happen from one play to the next. Like Michael Vick
Honestly,
might break off a 30-yard run, he might throw a 60-yard completion, or he might like get chased down and just fumble for no reason. Like you
the
just never knew.
closest comparison to like the sporadic style that is that team, but this team is completely worse. We just talked about them. I guess the Dolphins is the closest thing. Where just all the components are worse than that team. But
Yeah.
they're just
I
as
mean,
sporadic. You have no idea what's gonna happen.
like you talk about, the expression is like a poor man's version,
Yeah. That's
but
a
to
poor
say
man.
that like it's like to call the Dolphins, this year's Dolphins, a poor man's version of that Eagles team. I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch.
It is a stretch because they can't run with the football.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so you're taking one of the most vital
um,
components of that Eagles team.
yeah.
But yeah,
But
sad
like
that guy's gone. But I mean, it was
what
time.
other high flying offenses were fun to watch?
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
obviously, like I loved the Packers when the the year after their Super Bowl when
Oh,
Rodgers was
when they went 15-1,
15-1.
they
That
lost to
offense was
KC.
so much
Weird.
fun.
Oh man, but people remember that 15-1 season, but forget that like the latter half of that, everything started like crumbling.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Now it's because they
Um,
couldn't run the ball the same.
but like other offenses like that, I mean the 18-1 Patriots team uh,
Yeah,
with Randy Moss, that was a fun offense to watch too.
I would even consider the two offenses that we just watched, the Kansas City and Los
Oh,
Angeles Rams
absolutely.
offenses from last year.
Yeah,
Those
when
are
they
fun to
were, I
watch.
mean that double 50 burger game, um, you know, and one
Macklin.
that everybody sleeps on, just as we're talking about this, one offense that everybody sleeps on is the last couple years that Darren Sproles was in New Orleans. That was just so much fun. Honestly, like nobody talks about him. He is the most underrated player,
Darren Sproles.
Darren Sproles. I
Hmm.
mean, I
I
I,
want
I
to
don't
see
know.
his career stats, honestly.
Yeah, he his the thing is his stats don't necessarily jump out, but he creates so much. Like when he was in his prime, he was the focal point of the offense. The defense had to pay attention to him, and he was the reason that other players could get open. Like the Saints moved him around so much. They would have him line up in the backfield and run a wheel route down the sideline, or they'd split him out wide and have him run across. You know,
Very versatile.
he could do everything, and the defense had to focus on where he was, and that was a big
Is he
reason that
still in
that
the
offense was
league?
able to move. I think he might have retired. He was going to retire last year, and then he tore his ACL and broke his arm on the same play, and then came back this year. Uh, and let me look it up and see if he actually decided to retire now. Yeah, he hasn't decided yet if he's going to play.
That's a bad sign to say the least. I mean, if you want to see him play,
Well,
at least he might. He that just basically means he's gone.
it looks like, based on the headlines that I'm seeing here, the Eagles will gladly take him back. Um,
Of
so
course.
if he decides to play, he still has a team that'll welcome him in Philadelphia, and I hope he plays. He is my favorite non-Packer of all time, honestly. Like I, no hyperbole. He is my favorite non-Packer
Yeah, I
player.
remember you saying that quite a bit. He's an admirable player. I don't think he has anyone who really hates him.
Yeah,
Maybe Giants fans, maybe Cowboy fans.
yeah. The
But
teams that he beat, um, I'll never forget. One last Sproles note. His last year in New Orleans, I had him on my fantasy team, and they were playing on Monday night. I forget against who, but I was down like 35 points going into Monday night with only Sproles to play, and my opponent had nobody left. So I needed Sproles to have a monster game. And
sure enough.
by the end of the first half, I had already taken the lead. I think he had a rushing touchdown, he had a receiving touchdown, he had a punt return that he almost broke for a touchdown. It was, oh man, that was such a fun game to watch. Um,
Man.
but anyway,
In any
um,
case, yeah.
yeah, going back to news items, a couple more retirements. TJ Lang
Mm-hmm.
announced his retirement. I only really bring this up because
Yeah.
he he had his most productive years with the Packers and then signed with the Lions for a couple years and kind of fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
And
As
I
you do when you sign with the Lions.
it's unfortunate though because, the Lions obviously got got a bad deal there, but the Packers also did because the Packers offensive line was one of the best in the league before TJ Lang
It
left.
was the single best. I stand by that. When you look at the mid 2010s, right, and
Yeah,
think of great offensive lines, it's the Packers.
it's the
They led the
Packers
league,
and
and they were this whole entire holding, but not holding style of like blocking.
it's the
That's the
Packers and
Packers.
it's the Cowboys too. That's the other one. But yeah, the I mean that offensive line was great until TJ Lang left, and then the last couple years the offensive line has been a problem.
They've been deteriorating, and it's been terrible.
So
They're not ahead of the
I
curve
bring
anymore.
that up, but
It's another McCarthy thing where they're not ahead of the curve anymore.
yep. So hopefully the new coaching staff can fix that. But anyway, TJ Lang, I mean, he had a nice career. So
Yep.
um, congratulations on his career, I guess. And another offensive lineman retiring is Max Unger, the Saints center who was the,
Yeah,
the
like 12 years running, right?
no, no, he came over in the Jimmy Graham trade from Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he had a great career. One of the best centers in the league for most of it. Um, so again, congratulations on a great career, Max Unger. Um,
I can't
I'm
say much about him. He's a center.
Yeah, it's like offensive lineman we can't really evaluate, but I just figured I'd throw this in the news because
Yeah.
he's a
I'll give
very
my
notable
praise because
player.
I know that he's been in the league for like ever. But
Yeah, and he's been considered one of the best. Not that I would know.
not that I, yeah, I could look at film of him and eventually see what he's doing right compared to wrong. But like, oh, I've
Yeah.
never needed to evaluate offensive line play, but I think it is probably the most complex and important part of the sport.
Yep. So sticking with the Saints, they have signed Jared Cook, which we mentioned a little bit earlier. Um,
They did.
and Jared Cook was probably the top tight end on the market this offseason.
You would put him
Um,
over Eifert?
well, honestly, I think because of injury history,
Okay,
you,
yeah,
you put you
yeah.
put Cook ahead of Eifert.
Just because of that, I can agree with that. Yeah.
But that said, I was hoping that the Packers would bring back Jared Cook.
Really?
Um, I was really hoping that they would get rid of Jimmy Graham and bring back
Okay,
Jared
yeah.
Cook. But
Everyone. Oh
but
man.
the Saints. I mean, this is a great fit for him. Um, the Saints have needed a tight end pretty much since Jimmy Graham left. Um, and this is a really good fit for Cook in New Orleans, I think.
I think that everyone wins in that trade in New Orleans. Oh man. What did they
Yeah,
give up for Jared Cook, or was he just a free agent?
he was just a free agent. Yeah,
Huh. Yeah,
yeah.
he
So
just was signed today, actually, like officially.
yeah, yeah. A lot of
Um,
these signings take a
he
while to become official.
8 million guaranteed, 2-year contract.
Yeah, good signing for the Saints, I think. They still think that they're in their Super Bowl window. I would disagree, but but good signing for them. Good fit in their offense. Um, so moving on to the signing, one of the signings I'm most excited about. The Colts signed Justin Houston, and it's pretty much their only big move that they've made this offseason. Um, but it's a good one, I think. You're getting a guy who might be a little bit past his prime, but he's still a valuable pass rusher. He can still get after the quarterback, and I think he's a good player. And I mean, the Colts are just one of those teams that just needed a few pieces to put them over the top.
Oh yeah, I
And
would argue
I
that they
think,
already were over the top. They just needed time.
yeah, and I think Justin Houston is a great addition. Um, so other linebacker news, I guess. Bruce Irvin is going to the Panthers. Um,
Can't
I don't
say I
really,
do not know Bruce Irvin at all,
I don't have much to say about it. I mean, he
and
was
a
he
team
was a
that I
very
really have no care for, the Panthers.
yeah. He was a very, very productive player in Seattle at the start of his career. He hasn't done much since he's been in Oakland. Um, I mean, the Panthers needed somebody to replace Thomas Davis, I guess, but
Yeah.
I can't really say much about that signing. So let's just move on. Um, So speaking of the Panthers, still now former Panthers offensive lineman Matt Khalil, who got a ridiculous huge contract to go to the
Hmm.
Panthers, is now going to the Houston Texans. So
Okay.
as
Okay.
as skeptical as I am of Matt Khalil because he's not that good of a player,
What?
you know,
I'm
throughout his
talking.
career,
I'm doing a thing. I'm
he,
recording.
the Texans desperately needed help on the offensive line. I
Okay.
mean, Deshaun Watson was sacked more than any other quarterback.
Yeah.
So
They need
the,
upgrade
they
so
needed
badly. Sorry about that, by the way. I've been trying to
no,
or
that's okay.
being talked to by multiple people.
Um, so yeah, I mean they need to try something on that offensive line, and I mean Matt Khalil just happened to be the only thing available. Um, they'll probably they'll probably try to draft several offensive linemen and hope that they work out because their offensive line was awful last year. And Deshaun Watson can only do so much. So, um, I mean, That's really the one huge weakness on their team is the
Is
offensive
that
line.
Deshaun Watson gets hit way too much.
Yeah,
He doesn't need to use his feet as much as he already does. And
you know,
I'm
I
worried that Deshaun Watson, because I like watching him play, despite me not liking him,
oh, I
because
know,
he's
I
a
love
Texan.
Watson. He's so much fun to watch.
He's fun to yeah. You
He's
see
got that Vic.
glimpses of
He's got
Vic.
the Vic factor.
You get glimpses of one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah,
But I think that Kyle Murray will be way more of a Vic clone than Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson. Kyle Murray is really good. He's the
yeah.
best quarterback in the draft by far.
We'll see. We'll see how that works out. So moving on from Matt Khalil, uh, the Vikings are bringing back Dan Bailey,
Yeah,
um, the kicker, the longtime Cowboys kicker that they signed.
I don't think
Uh,
that's a bad trade. I mean, pick up
well,
re-signing
yeah,
him.
I mean
He's
he's
fine.
capable. I just
He
I only really bring it up because I wanted to bring up why he ended up with Minnesota in the first place, which was that Daniel Carlson missed 3 field goals in that week 2 tie against the Packers last
yeah,
year, and then they cut him and brought in Dan Bailey. Um,
man, the lifestyle of kickers. The only kicker I've seen have terrible games and stay is Mason Crosby.
yeah, I know.
But the thing about Mason
He's
Crosby is that he has terrible games and then he doesn't have them for like a few seasons. They're
well,
just, and it's not
he
even
really
pressure that
only
really gets them. I think it's just him. Sometimes he just forgets.
he forgets how to kick. Um, he
Well,
really
it's all
only had
mental. Is the thing.
he
It's
really only had one bad season, and then last year was not great. He had that awful game in Detroit, of course,
and I mean,
but
after that game, it wasn't bad. He was a top kicker in the league. Still, I'd still rank him top five.
yeah, he was. I mean, he's still one of the best kickers out there, and I again, I've always said this. At the time when he had that horrible season, I thought the Packers needed to move on. But since they stuck with him, he's been one of the best kickers in the league.
Yeah,
So,
he has a boot. I think he can make 60, 63-yard field goals. Still, I
yeah,
wouldn't say reliably, but
yeah.
no one can.
Okay. Um, moving on. Those are safeties. The
Did we
the
just do the
Eagle.
segment already? I mean, we've
Nope, not yet.
not
We got to
yet.
get
All
through.
right, not yet.
We got to get through the last few items here. The Eagles are bringing back Ronald Darby on a 1 year deal.
Man, a lot of these names are just like who?
Ronald Darby is a pretty solid corner, I think.
He's a
Um,
cornerback.
yeah, he tore his ACL in November.
That'd be why I don't remember him.
Yeah, he was a long time Bill, I think. He was with the
That's
Buffalo
another
Bills
reason
for a
why I wouldn't
while.
remember him.
And yeah, he's a good player, and I guess it's good that he's getting another chance with the Eagles to prove it. Um, you never know with those late season ACL tears,
Yeah,
what's going to happen. So best of luck
ACLs
to
are
him.
scary. That's the scariest injury to have for a player.
Yeah, but if he gets back to his old form, he's a valuable piece of that secondary. So that's a I like that signing.
Yeah.
Um, I don't even know why I included this item, to be honest, but I have Mark Barron signed with the Steelers. um,
Okay.
I don't know why I included that. Let's just move on.
All right. Yeah.
Congratulations, Mark Barron. um, and Jerick McKinnon is going to remain with San Francisco, um, which is interesting because they signed Tevin Coleman, of course, and you thought maybe they would cut McKinnon to save some money after they handed him that big contract last year, and then he got hurt. Um, it should be interesting to see what happens in that backfield.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, last year I thought that they're the guys who started the season low on the depth chart turned out to be their best running backs. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the coaching staff decides to maximize these guys. I
uh,
it's an interesting move to keep McKinnon around because I really did expect him to get cut. He was never really a star, you know. He was Adrian Peterson's backup for quite a while, and
McKinnon's
that's
still
pretty much
signed.
all
It's
he.
the 49ers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. I think the 49ers are. They also have Coleman, who they signed.
right. Yep.
And I think that's their number one. McKinnon will be a good backup. And I. Wait, who's their. It was a rookie, right? That they had most of the season?
Jimmy Garoppolo.
What? Their running back.
Well, I mean, it was McKinnon.
Yeah, I know. And then he got hurt. And was it Brea? What was his
Yeah,
name?
it was Matt Breida,
Yeah, that
and
guy.
then he got hurt too, and then I can't remember who took over for him.
I think that the best player. Coleman's aging, though. Their backfield's too old to be like, wow. But I
We'll
think
see.
they'll be great for Garoppolo.
Yeah. Okay. So that's all I had that I really wanted to talk about now. There's a couple of items that I had that we should probably talk about later. So the NFL did announce yesterday that the opening kickoff game will not be the Patriots. It will be Packers at Bears.
Yeah, it will.
Um,
The Mac Rogers return.
yeah, and I imagine that we'll talk about all that more when the schedule actually comes out, the full schedule,
Oh, yeah.
um, closer to
See
the
how many of
draft.
our predictions.
Yeah, and I'll probably when that comes out, I'm gonna try to I'll remake the spreadsheet where I order it in the correct order of games. Um,
Good luck. I'd say
yeah,
that much.
it'll take an afternoon. Um,
Yeah,
so
take a minute.
so like I said, we'll talk about all that stuff eventually. Um, Other things to keep an eye on, the whole Tyreek Hill situation that's going on. Um,
Didn't he get the whole hunt?
well, nothing's happened with him so far. He's he's still being investigated, I guess, for these
Charges?
these allegations.
Hmm.
And I mean,
There's not much to
well,
say then. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, there's
If he does like end up getting suspended, ooh,
like I said, we'll talk
yikes.
about it. We'll talk about it when something actually happens with
I
his story.
considered
But
him like top 3 receiver in the league, dude. He's really good.
oh yeah, I mean he's an important player on that team, so we'll see what happens with that. Um, Another thing to talk about when it actually happens is they are right now the owners meetings are going on, and they are discussing a possible change to the onside kick rule.
Didn't they
Um,
also discuss pass interference?
yeah, they've talked about that too, but the onside kick is the one that interests me because the proposal now is that in the fourth quarter, instead of attempting an onside kick, teams will essentially be able to run a 4th and 15 play.
I love that. Oh, there'll be
I do
so
too.
many less injuries.
Because we're inching closer and closer to just eliminating kickoffs altogether.
Which is the worst play
And
in football, and no one likes them.
yeah, well, and I
Everyone
mean,
likes punts.
I'm sure you've seen the same John Boyce video that I have.
Oh, John, I love it. John Boyce,
Yeah,
fantastic guy. I've watched that video so many times. Have you
yeah.
seen Tangent? I think everyone watching this should watch this as well. It's a really long video about uh is it about every single kickoff?
No, it was about punts.
I thought it was punts, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, it's punts. Yep.
And that is a fantastic video.
It was so
The
much fun
saddest
to
punt
watch
in
that
NFL history.
because I clicked on it. I didn't look at how long that video was going to be,
Yeah.
and I clicked on it thinking it was going to be like a 10-minute video or whatever.
And
But I was so like engrossed by it the entire time that I did not realize that it was almost an hour later when the video ended.
yeah. He spent a long time on that. He is a fantastic documentary. I would call them documentaries at this point.
Yeah.
Well, good channel.
So
Shout out to John Boyce.
yeah, absolutely. So anyway, I hope that they replace kickoffs altogether eventually. And again, we'll see what happens with that. And then the last thing that we should keep an eye on is that apparently ESPN is courting Peyton Manning to be the new Monday Night Football color guy.
Is he gonna be on the Oh man, the color caster Peyton Manning. Oh man.
So he would be taking Jason Witten's place essentially if they do agree that he will take that
You
job.
know what I wish that broadcasts had? A live chat feature where like people from across the league, from players or whatever, could like message the color caster or something. So like in between like a play or something, they could like or like even at halftime, because they kind of do that with Twitter. They're like, oh, this guy tweeted this during the game. It's like, but like, I think if you had like a live chat scrolling of like players reacting to the game, that'd be really cool.
Well, that would be interesting. My dad suggested many years ago that all the broadcasters, all the announcers should have like an electric shock collar, and so every time they said something stupid, he could press a button and shock them, and that might get them to say less stupid things.
uh,
So he's just got like a remote, and he just presses the Aikman button, and shocks Troy Aikman, and
the Aikman
whatever.
button.
The Aikman button would be like really worn out from overuse. But anyway, that's really all for right now. I think it's time to get into our segment, which we are calling the safety carousel.
The safety carousel. I think I'll start the music then.
Okay. And is it going?
It is. It's been going.
Okay, great. So to recap what we talked about last time, the safety carousel, there's been a lot of safety moves going on, and they almost formed a complete cycle for a little while there. So the chain sort of started with in the Odell Beckham trade, Jabril Peppers went to the Giants.
Yep.
The Giants had released Landon Collins, who then signed with Washington. Washington had let Clinton Dix go. He signed with the Bears. Adrian Amos left the Bears for the Packers. And now, most recently, Kentrell Bryce left the Packers to go to Tampa Bay.
So the teams without a new safety are the Browns.
The Browns. Yes, the Browns at this point.
That's
well, there's been more moves. So, Kentrell Bryce is now in Tampa Bay. Chris Conte and Josh Shaw, who were starting safeties last year,
right?
We'll get to them in a second.
All right.
They were starting safeties last year for Tampa Bay. They're both free agents, so they could sign somewhere anytime now. The Texans lost Tyrann Mathieu to the Chiefs, of course, and the Chiefs lost Eric Berry, and Berry hasn't signed anywhere yet, right?
Oh, man.
Or has he?
I'm just gonna look at Twitter. I'm gonna search Twitter. I'm gonna say Berry, Eric Berry, and Twitter usually is updated.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's still a free agent. He's still out there. And of course, he's a candidate to go to the Browns and fill that vacancy.
Also looks like he might sign with the Cowboys.
Well, they had looked at him, but then recently, more recently, the Cowboys acquired Viking safety George Iloka. And the other Viking safety, Andrew Sendejo, is headed to Philadelphia. So, craziness, right? um, we already know, of course, that Earl Thomas is heading to Baltimore now from Seattle, and there was a point where Earl Thomas hadn't signed anywhere yet, and it looked like every safety on the market, there was potential for them to just form a complete cycle that went back to the Browns.
Who the Browns are getting.
Yeah, I'm. My suspicion
Who
is
Earl
Eric
Thomas
Berry,
on right now?
the Ravens. He's with.
That's right. I forgot that Ingram. We talked about that last time.
Yeah. And somebody went to the Rams too, and I can't remember who it was. Let me look it up quick. Oh yeah, Eric Weddle went from Baltimore to the Rams. Forgot about that. So.
Oh man.
So anyway, lots of craziness.
It's just so who won?
Who has won the safety carousel?
Who won the safety carousel?
That's a good question. Who's the biggest upgrade?
Who is the biggest winner and who is the biggest loser? Because I think it is the Browns right now.
No, well, okay. Right now they don't have anybody, but
Exactly.
of the teams that have actually acquired a safety, the biggest loser I feel like is Tampa Bay because Kentrell Bryce is just not good.
You know? Does it do anything?
The number of blown coverages that I have seen of Kentrell Bryce in the couple of years that he's been with the Packers is just
mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling. He's not a good player. Why anybody would want to bring him in just confuses me.
If anyone wants to bring him in, Tampa Bay.
I feel like the biggest winner so far. I mean, I feel like the Redskins. No, I feel like upgrading. I feel like upgrading from Eric Weddle to Earl Thomas is pretty good.
I mean, also Thomas Mateo. I mean, the thing about the Chiefs is like
Tyrann Mathieu too. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
There are a lot of really good players. I think that upgrade from Eric Berry to Matthew is actually going to be underrated for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a great trade-off for the Chiefs.
I think that they need to get rid of Berry, and I think that Matthew is the perfect fit for them.
I mean, going back to how bad Kentrell Bryce is, though, like the upgrade that the Packers have from Bryce to Adrian Amos has to be severe. Like, that's a huge upgrade.
You say this, and I'm still going to say I don't know how good Amos is because I think that Jackson is just that good on the Bears.
I mean, you might be right, but he's got to be better than Kentrell Bryce by a lot. I mean,
you're really going in on this guy.
I mean, I am so sick of Kentrell Bryce. I'm so glad he's not a Packer anymore.
My name.
Yeah, but it's spelled with an I, not a Y, so it's...
he's dead to me now.
But anyway, other upgrades. Is Landon Collins a huge upgrade over Clinton Dix?
Yes.
I mean, it's an upgrade, but is it huge? Because Clinton Dix is still a very good safety.
Going from above average to like one of the best. That's always you always.
Okay, and is the Giants
look really interesting this year? I like what Strong Opinion Sports says about the Redskins. And I completely agreed. I didn't know why people weren't talking about them more. The Redskins seem like they got Peterson back. They got Case Keenum. That's really interesting. I don't know if that's going to be good or bad, but that's like, it makes my mind be like, oh man, this could be a really fun team to watch. You got Landon Collins.
How about the Giants though? I mean, are they one of the biggest losers of this, going from Landon Collins to Jabril Peppers?
Oh no, loser.
I mean, I really like
a loser because they also lost Odell Beckham. Like,
yeah, that's true.
They're just a loser overall. They're just a bad team.
Yeah, that's a good point. So anyway, um, I think that's it for the safety carousel for now. So you can stop the music. I think.
All right.
All right.
So
So
that
are we ready to
lasted like
move on?
7 minutes.
That was fun though.
It was a fun little
Um,
segment, but are we ready to
so
to go
anytime
towards?
now, anytime that there's any safety move in the NFL, we have to bring back the safety carousel.
I agree.
So anyway,
Hmm. I got to go back to the.
so is there anything else that you want to talk about before we get to our AFC South discussion?
I actually have nothing. Here I am coming all the way. Yeah, I'm getting out the templates right now actually because I want to take a screenshot. So yeah, I think that we can move on to the team that we're going to start with, which is going to be the
Okay.
Colts.
Well, yeah, let's move on to the AFC South discussion. So, as we talked about last time, Bryce and I, the day after the Super Bowl, predicted every single game for the upcoming season and its result. And we talked about the AFC North last time, and now we're going to talk about the AFC South. Um, and we are going in the best possible order, alphabetical.
Alphabetical.
So we begin with the Colts, whose name starts with C. Um, so do you have the Colts up on the
I
screen
have the
now?
Colts up on the screen. The 14-2 Colts that we have,
Yeah,
where they
tied for
lose
the
one to the Jaguars and lose one to the Chiefs, and then they just sweep the NFL from that point onward.
Yep. So yeah, in
They
their
don't got
division
easy schedule either. They just, well, their conference
we
games
just
aren't too hard.
we're just so high on the Colts. And so yeah, like
I'm
Bryce said,
still just as high. I think it's really good.
we have them splitting the Jaguars and we have them sweeping the Texans and Titans. And then we have them winning conference games at home against the Broncos, Raiders, and Dolphins, which I don't think is a stretch at all. And then winning at Chargers, which again, I don't think is a stretch because that's basically a home game going to play the Chargers.
Yeah, and I
And
think the Colts are just that good, and the Chargers are probably going to be a waning
yeah,
excerpt of what they once were. I forget if we have them making the playoffs, but I don't want to look because we're not talking about the Chargers now, are we?
no, we're not. But for the record, I think we have them missing. Um, and then we have the
That makes sense.
Colts winning at Pittsburgh, which at the time we made these predictions, we were assuming Le'Veon Bell to the Colts, which is why I think we
You
said that
did.
was
I did not.
we said that was going to be the Bell revenge game, or at least I did. Um,
And I
but
still think
even
that they beat the Steelers.
I think so too. The
I think
Steelers,
just I'm looking at where the Colts are right now. The Colts are a top 3 team in the league. I think Super Bowl bets they are actually third or fourth right now.
yeah.
So I mean, the Steelers they're not even in the conversation.
So then, of course, the only other loss for the Colts is at Chiefs, which of course is going to be tough. Rematch of the divisional playoff game that they lost.
They're going to be in
Um,
Arrowhead, and Arrowhead's a really good home field advantage.
yep. So
Um,
I'm okay with that being a
the
loss.
only thing that I could say if they win is if Tyreek Hill actually does get like just poofed away from the NFL if something actually happened.
Yeah, and of
That's real.
course like I said earlier, we'll talk about that when it happens.
Yeah, we'll cross
Um,
that bridge when we get there.
but then out of conference, I mean, we have them sweeping the NFC South, the Falcons and Panthers at home, Buccaneers and Saints on the road. And
Yeah,
I don't think that the Saints are going to be that good of a team. Again, we're not talking about the Saints now, but I feel like they are a waning team. Um,
you want to get it out in the record for the record.
I don't think that the Buccaneers are going to be good. Of course, that they're still a work in progress, and I think
They've been a
that
work in progress since like they did they lose the Super Bowl that one time? They lost it, right?
I think they won it.
against the Raiders.
Yeah.
I
Um,
can't remember that
but
far.
anyway, and then the Falcons. I think the Falcons will be good, but the fact that they're playing in Indianapolis, I think I give that to the Colts. And the Panthers too. I don't know what the Panthers are going to be. I don't think they're going to be that strong of a team.
They
So
might, they could be anything at this point.
yeah,
I
a
thought
lot of
they
it
were gonna
depends
sign
on.
Teddy, and I thought Teddy was gonna start week 1 because I didn't think Cam was gonna be able to.
Yeah, a lot of it does depend on how Cam Newton is. But anyway, I mean that's our prediction for the Colts. So, like we did last time, is there anything that you would change now as compared to when we made these predictions?
No, not that I see. I want to change. They lose to the Jaguars twice, but I'm gonna be realistic with myself here.
Yeah,
And the Colts are a really
part
scary
of
team, and I don't like that they're really scary again. They don't deserve to be.
one thing I've noticed is that with this exercise, we tend to skew the teams that we think are really good tend to be dominant, and the teams that we think are bad tend to be just awful 1-15, 2-14 type teams. And I think it's because, in in this version of reality where we're predicting results,
Yeah,
it's easy to just say, well, the bad teams are never going to beat the good teams. But in actual reality, anything can happen in the NFL. You never know.
I
The
agree.
the Buccaneers could beat the Colts. We have no idea.
We're
Um
basically in a perfect
so
world. What happens? Well,
so yeah,
we don't live, but this
more
is not
likely
a perfect world.
more likely the Colts will have somewhere between 11 and 13 wins as opposed to 14. But um that's our prediction, 14-2. So, anything to say on the Colts before we move on to the Jags?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, then let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right, the 11-5 Duval Jaguars.
Yep. So, as we mentioned, we have them splitting with the Colts, and we also have them splitting with the Titans
No,
because the Titans,
that's just Titans
yeah,
always beat the Jaguars.
there's a cycle
Jaguars
in
always beat the Colts.
the AFC
Colts
South
always
is an
beat the
interesting
Titans.
division because throughout AFC South history, especially the last few years, the Titans have always owned the Jaguars. The Jaguars have on and off owned the Colts, and the Colts have always owned the Titans. I don't think Andrew Luck, I don't think has ever lost to the Titans.
Ha!
Um, so that's why we have the Titans splitting with the Jags. Is they just
Even
always seem to beat the Jags
despite the
once.
fact that we do not believe in the Titans,
No, not
I
at
will
all.
never believe in them. Fuck them.
So then the
Terrible team.
Jaguars conference record, we have them winning at the Chargers or home against the Chargers, excuse me. Um, and home against the Jets, and we have them losing at home to the Chiefs. Then we have them going on the road and losing in Mile High, which is a tough place to play, and winning at Raiders and at Bengals, which look like easy-ish matchups.
Mm-hmm.
And then out of conference, we have them beating the Bucks and Saints at home and beating the Panthers on the road and losing in the Georgia Dome. Although it's not the Georgia Dome, what's it called now? The new stadium. Mercedes Benz Stadium or something like that. I don't know. But
Yeah.
they're we have them losing in Atlanta.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium. You're right.
It's confusing though because I think that the Superdome in New Orleans is now called the Mercedes Benz Superdome as well. You can look that up and verify it if you want, but but yeah, that makes it very confusing, especially with the two teams being in the same division.
Mercedes-Benz Superdome and oh my, what?
They're in the same division and relatively close proximity to one another, New Orleans and Atlanta.
Yeah.
So it just makes it very confusing.
I
But
mean, they're technically the same place to us. I've never been to the South. I've
no,
never
I
been to the
haven't.
Southeast.
The farthest south, well, actually, I've been to Orlando, but aside from that, the farthest south I've actually been is Nashville. So
I mean, I lived in Arizona, but that's like the complete other way south.
Yeah, yeah. The Southwest is very different.
Quite different.
But anyway, the Jaguars are your team, so I'll let you talk about them.
Well, we're the best team in the world, and we won't drop a game. This is a scam. Uh, uh, so well, I don't know what you want me to say. I think I agree with all of these. I mean, the thing about the like one game that we could dispute is the Broncos, but like the Broncos might not be good next year, but
But I think we're giving them the benefit of Mile High in
Mile
that
High is
matchup.
so hard to play in, dude.
Yeah.
It's I think a team like the Jaguars might be able to do it because they'll have a I assume they'll still have a strong defense, and that
Well,
might be
yeah.
the way you win in Mile High, but
Like we said, we don't think the Broncos are good. We just think that they have a great home field advantage.
it's just unparalleled between anyone.
Yeah.
Even Seattle can't match that. Like the fact that your altitude is to the point where some players are just like, I can't play.
Yeah.
I literally
Well, I mean,
can't play in this
who is
altitude.
the Steelers
Yeah,
player who had a condition where he physically could not play in
he
Mile High?
physically couldn't play because of the stadium's location.
Oh, it was Ryan Clark.
Yep.
Yep, the safety for the Steelers, and he whenever they'd have a road game in Denver, he just couldn't go because he had I think a sickle cell condition.
Yeah. And when you, I mean, when you got something that good for home field,
Yeah.
it's hard to argue. It's like the
So
location of the stadium makes it so. But you never know.
anyway, I'm comfortable with these Jaguars
I am
results. I mean,
comfortable.
it's possible that the Jaguars could just crash and burn and Nick
Hey,
Foles could be a horrible failure, but I
I
think
don't
that
think
this is
Nick
more
Foles will be the
likely.
reason they crash and burn. If they crash and burn, it's because they don't get any weapons that facilitate Nick Foles' play style. And that's what I'm really worried about, is that they don't really have anybody who can fight for a 50-50 ball right now. Holy crap.
Sure. Um yeah, it's interesting that we have because we were really high on the Jets as well. And I feel like the Jets Jaguars game is a coin flip for us, and we have the Jaguars winning because they're at home. And I think that's one that could go either way, though.
Uh, yeah. The Jets look really good this season. They do.
Yeah, especially with the addition of Bell. Um, and at Raiders is another one. Like anytime we have a team beating the Raiders on the road, I'm now skeptical because at the time we made these predictions, we thought the Raiders were going to be homeless and have no players. And now suddenly they have uh, a home in Oakland, which is not an easy place to play in, and they have Antonio Brown and Vontez Perfect.
Yeah, they have leaders on both sides of the ball.
So
They got playmakers.
like we were saying
But they're
earlier in the
really
show,
broken, dude.
they could play spoiler this year, and
They have
the
band-aids, I'll say that.
but they could play spoiler to some of these teams that have playoff aspirations, like Jacksonville does. So you
I
never
don't
know.
want that to happen though, so it won't happen.
So anyway, are we ready to move on from the Jaguars?
I'm ready if you are.
Okay, then let us move on to the Houston Texans, the third alphabetical team in the AFC South. Alphabetical by team name, not by city.
Alphabetical by team name. So we're gonna go to the Texans.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, so any overall thoughts on the Texans before we break it down, or do you want to break it down first?
Well, we have them basically getting dominated through the division. And that does look like it still is happening. I mean, I don't really. I look at the Texans and I think, well, they upgraded one of the worst parts of their team, right?
Well, maybe.
Maybe,
I mean,
maybe
Matt Khalil is not necessarily a
that
great player.
remains to be seen. However, we would hope that they are. Their defense doesn't look good. I
Hmm.
Their defense doesn't really look like it'll facilitate that well. And
Oh, shoot.
what's up?
Okay, Bryce, I gotta deal with something real quick. Vamp for like 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
All right, cool. So we think that the
Just
Colts and
talk about
Jaguars are going to be very good, right?
just
Don't
just
worry.
talk about stuff while I'm gone. Okay,
All
I'll be
right.
back.
So the Jaguars and Colts, very good teams, both of them. Another really detrimental part about the Texans' play currently is that they have one of the hardest schedules, as you can see. They have to play the Patriots. That might be at home, but Jesus, the Patriots still look fantastic. Chargers, Chiefs, Ravens are their road games. They cannot win any of those. I don't care if the Chargers have a terrible home field. The Chargers are going to still be formidable enough for that Texans team. The I don't really still see a downside in the Chargers' play except for Philip Rivers. That is actually amazing if your question mark is Philip Rivers. Um, they have to play the NFC South, and the Falcons are probably going to be fantastic, and the Saints are still going to be the Saints. Buccaneers and Panthers Panthers are still a question mark. Buccaneers are still probably formidable as one of the worst teams in the league. And Titans, we have them splitting because I think they'll be around the exact same level of skill, most likely. But yeah, they just have one of the hardest schedules in the league, and probably will be a 5-11 team that everyone thought would have been around 8-8, 9-7. Yeah. So while he's still gone, I'll talk about the fact that Bortles should have a starting position in the league. Now, hear me out here. Let's see. Let's get this man's face up in here. Nah, let's not do that. Let's still talk about the Texans. Texans. I think that maybe they can take both the games off the Titans, actually. But when a team starts losing a lot, it's hard for them to get motivated. It's hard for them to, because they start doubting each other. The emotions of football teams runs through way more than other sports because of how physical the sport is and how uh, hormones and everything actually play such a vital role in the person's mental status. So I could see him dropping to Titans still, regardless. It won't be easy. It's a rival game, but there's a lot to process with that. Man, beating the Raiders at home, I can see him doing it. I think that's fine. Broncos at home, Broncos aren't going to be good. Broncos might be the worst team in that division now. Broncos haven't been making anything. John Elway, oh man, that guy needs out of football. He needs to just retire, sit at home, and relish in his accomplishments. He won a Super Bowl as an owner. Just go home, man. Go home, old man.
Okay. So I don't know what you were talking about while I was gone there for a minute.
I just rambled on about the Texans, the whole entire schedule.
Okay. So did you break down their results then?
I did, and I said that basically they have one of the hardest schedules in the league, and it's kind of unfortunate. They probably would have been an 8-8 team, but
Yeah.
their away games are incredible. They have to play the Falcons as one of their home, and as well as the Patriots, which are two teams that have Super Bowl aspirations, I believe.
Yeah.
And they have to play in a division with the Jaguars and the Colts.
Yeah. And I mean, at Saints is a really tough matchup. You know,
Yeah,
I
and their wins are actually quite simple. And the Panthers are still like a who? We don't know.
yeah, we
They're the
we really
most
don't know.
enigma team in the league right now, in my opinion.
So yeah,
Even
I
the
mean,
Packers actually might be an enigma as well.
mm,
Like, we don't know how their coaching Matt LaFleur is going to be.
no,
But
yeah, we
regardless,
have like I've said before, I'm optimistic about the Packers, but we're not talking about the Packers now. We're talking about the Texans, and they, like you said, they have a really rough schedule. They're probably going to be an average team, but they're they're going to end up with a below 500 record just because their schedule's tough.
yeah, I can believe that. I don't
And
think
it's
they'll be able to
unfortunate.
make it. But I do believe they'll be a solid team. They'll still be able to play upset, and I think that their record might be closer to 6 or 7 wins
Yeah,
gone
it
further. I don't know where they're going to get those extra wins, but
yeah, it's unfortunate because I as a Wisconsin person, I've always been a fan of JJ Watt. You know, I watched him play when he was playing for Wisconsin, and I've always really wanted him to succeed, and he's had a great NFL career, but the team success has just never been there,
yeah,
and it sucks. Like the Texans are a team that I've wanted to see do well for a very long time, but they're just
yeah, no,
they can't seem to put it together.
good. Keep it that way.
I mean, I know that you don't want to see them do well because you are a Jaguars fan, and I get that. But as an outsider to this division, I've really wanted to see the Texans do well for a long time, and they just never have. They've never gotten past. I think they might have made it to the divisional playoffs a couple times. Well, because they beat the Bengals a couple times in the wild card round, but they've never gotten past the divisional playoffs,
Yeah,
and they've
it's been
never
a
even
little
had a
tragic.
first round
Not
bye.
gonna
Like
lie.
their mo is that the best they ever do is they win the wild card game and then lose the divisional game.
Usually to the Patriots.
So anyway, is there anything else you want to say on the Texans before we get to the Titans?
Good riddance. All right.
So anyway, let's move on to the Tennessee Titans or
We're
Titans.
we're getting rid of all my least favorite teams. You got the Steelers last week. We got the AFC South teams not named Jacksonville.
Yeah.
This is great. I get to rag on how terrible these teams are. How they all should crash and burn and never should see the light of day.
So um, the Titans we have getting swept by the Colts because the Colts own the Titans, and we have them splitting with the Texans because both of those teams are bad, and taking one from the Jaguars because the Titans own the Jaguars. And then we have their their two wins out of the division come at home against the Bills and at home against the Buccaneers.
Yep.
And then they lose to the Chargers, Chiefs, and Saints at home, and they lose all of their road games to the Broncos, Raiders, Browns, Falcons, and Panthers.
Again, the Titans don't seem like a good team.
No, they're just not. I mean, they've just, ugh, they're
Man,
just such a
Ryan
weird team.
Tannehill.
It's like ever Mariota's whole career. It's like they're just a bad team that somehow stumbles into like around 8 or 9 wins. Like every year, that just seems to be their thing.
I don't know if
And
it's coaching or it's just their roster is that eh.
I actually like Mike Vrabel and his staff. What he did last year with them, I think that they finished better than their talent should have finished. Like
I agree.
they played better than the sum of their parts, I guess.
Yep.
And so credit to Mike Vrabel for that. But I really think this is a bad team, and I don't think they're going to do well this year.
I can agree with that.
So I mean that's all I really have to say about the Tennessee Titans. We have them going 4-12. I don't know if we
Uh,
actually said that.
we do have 4-12 as their
Yeah,
schedule dictates, and yeah,
yeah. So yeah, that's the Titans.
I don't have a
Um,
lot else to say about the Titans.
so they of course finish in last place, one game behind the Texans in the division, who are 5-11, and then the Jaguars were 11-5, and the Colts 14-2. So the Colts, of course, win this division, and the Jaguars are in the mix for a wild card. Um, they're contenders as well, and I don't think we will reveal who our wild cards are because we haven't gone over all the teams yet.
Of
Um,
course, yeah.
yeah,
We should go for playoffs and all that.
Yeah, that'll be
And
once we get through all the divisions.
yeah,
So any final thoughts on the AFC South?
um, the
I mean,
AFC South.
I'm kind of leaving it to you because I
It
know
is
that
my division. Yeah,
this is the division that you follow closely. So
the
I
Colts
don't
are
have
fantastic, and I hate that they're
yeah.
fantastic. And I hope to God that the Jaguars do something and are formidable at least. I want to have
Yeah.
fun watching them because last year was such a tragedy. Oh, it was so frustrating watching them. But I
Yeah.
know that because of how frustrated I was last season, it's going to be so good if they 11 wins. I'll be so happy.
Well, and honestly, like, let's be realistic. Even if they like stumble to like a 9-7 record and get a wild card appearance,
I'll
you'll
be
still be
happy.
ecstatic.
I'll be like, oh my god. I'll still be a little disappointed though. I'll always want better.
Yeah.
I'll always try to bite off more than I can chew.
So anyway,
With
that
that,
wraps up
yeah.
our discussion of the AFC South. Next time we will talk about the AFC East. Um, and once again, we'll go in the best possible order, alphabetical. Um, so we will talk about the Bills, Dolphins, Jets, and Patriots in that order.
Yeah.
So, all right. Um, any more football related thoughts before we move on?
I do not believe so. I believe that we have the last segment to go through at this point.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're on to our music segment, which we don't have a name for yet. Um, but I, have we decided we're just going to stick with this every week and just keep recommending stuff? Because I mean, it seems like it's working.
I believe it's fine. Yeah. So
Okay.
I guess I will ask first. Uh
Yeah.
how did you enjoy, or if you did, Andrew Jackson
Well,
Jihad's People Who Can Eat People Are the Luckiest People in the World?
so you know what? I want to go second actually because it ties into my recommendation for next time. So I want to ask
All
you
right.
first. What did you think of Paramore's Brand New Eyes?
So I have listened to this before. Uh way back, way back. This is So, upon listening again, I'm glad to say that I haven't changed my opinion on the album. However, I don't know how you're going to feel about it. I think it's a 5 out of 10. I'll say that still. I think that it there are songs in it that are really good, but it comes with the same stigma that a lot of pop punk has, which is the
Yeah.
production is god awful. The it's so blatantly just in your face. Songs like The Only Exception are awful. I cannot stand that. But I think pop punk is the best when it's just fun, it's energetic, and you have songs like Brick by Boring Brick where you're just sitting there like, this is fun. This is pure fun. I'm having a blast. Here we go. I can see people really enjoying this. I don't have a lot of value with it. However, I will say that there are a lot of moments on the album where I'm like, this is fun. This is a lot of fun. I
Well,
can
good.
get behind it.
Yeah, I agree with much of what you said about it. Okay, so on to Andrew Jackson Jihad. Uh, People who can eat people are the luckiest people in the world.
Fantastic album name.
Okay, here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
Why why do so many of these bands the I don't want to say obscure, but the more obscure bands, why do so many of them tend to choose names that are like almost designed to put off people? Like
Uh, for example, what do you mean?
okay, here's the thing. Using the word jihad in the name of your band is going to immediately alienate a lot of people. And
I don't know. I've never really. I mean, you
using
say this,
Andrew
but
Jackson using Andrew Jackson in your name is going to alienate a lot of people.
If
So,
you if it
like,
makes you feel any better, the band has since changed their name to AJJ because they thought they don't. I think the name change is kind of dumb. No one really likes that they name changed, but they basically
anyway,
had that stigma. But I don't know.
I don't get that. But anyway, um, so it was interesting.
Interesting.
I'm I'm not like a huge fan of like folk music in general.
Of course,
Um,
I am.
but
I love it.
it was kind of cool. It Some of the songs were just kind of like I listened to it and I was just like, ugh, like, do I really have to slog through this? But then there were some that were really catchy and I kind of liked it. I liked the lyrics, even though
The
they can
lyrics
be
are
like,
really nice, in my opinion.
even though some of them are like incredibly dark.
Oh yeah.
um,
What I love about the band is that AJJ is one of those bands where they have those really like folk music is really upbeat, right? But then you listen
right.
to the lyrics and you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the closing track, "People," wraps the album up the best. I think
Yeah. So I
because
was confused as to why People 2, The Reckoning, comes before People in the track listing. But it was interesting because I believe it was People 2, The Reckoning, had the reference to Mrs. Robinson,
yes,
the Simon and Garfunkel song.
I would say it's a recreation. I would call it a cover.
It was, well,
It
no, that's not what a cover is.
well, it
But
covers the song. It
it
in
doesn't. It doesn't. It samples the song.
Okay, I could say it's sampling. That's
But in any case, that was kind of fun.
yeah,
Actually, I liked People and People 2. Um, and there were a couple others that I thought were good, and then some that I thought were just like, I don't want to be listening to this. But I listened to it anyway. And it was interesting because when I thought about it, I actually had an album picked out because I didn't listen to this until last night. So I had an album picked out that I was going to recommend for this time.
yeah.
And then after listening to this, I decided to go with something else. Um, so because of the reference to Mrs. Robinson, it kind of reminded me of, you know, the whole time I was listening to this album, I was trying to place it like what it sounded like that I had heard before,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until that track where they reference Mrs. Robinson that I went, oh yeah, the Simon and Garfunkel reference or influence is so clear. Like
Yeah, Woody Guthrie, Simon and
it's clear that,
Garfunkel.
that Simon and Garfunkel was a big influence for these guys. So on that note, I decided that my recommendation for you for next time is going to be a Simon and Garfunkel album,
Oh, I love
and
them. They're really
it's
nice.
going to be their last one, Bridge Over Troubled Water, because that is my favorite of their albums.
You say you don't like folk, but
Well, okay, Simon and Garfunkel is pretty much the only folk type band that I've really listened to.
really,
Um,
you haven't listened to Violent Femmes? You know, ba da da da
oh
da 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 da
yeah,
da.
a little bit, but Simon and Garfunkel is interesting because my dad played that for me when I was a really little kid, and
Yeah.
so I've kind of always had an attachment to Simon and
There's
Garfunkel for that
Ryan's
reason.
choice on the screen, and I never mentioned my choice, but I'll tell you right now,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's all right. Let me get. It is gonna be a complete turn, change of pace. A very very pretty record, a very fun. I hope you enjoy the sound. It's really wholesome. The album is called "You Will Never Know Why" by Sweet Trip. It is
What is it?
"You Will Never Know Why" by Sweet Trip, and this album has a lot. It's a dream poppy album. And dream pop does not mean it's pop music. Contrary to popular belief, it has a lot of electronic influence in it. I would say that uh, the songwriting is fantastic. There's a lot of pretty songs that are very catchy, and they're just a lot of good fun.
Hmm.
Uh,
All right.
I think you'll enjoy the sound of it. The sound is
Well,
fantastic.
it's as expected. It's not something that I've heard before,
Oh yeah, no, they're not some fans
so
that
I'm excited. I'm excited to listen to it and see what it is. Should
uh
be fun.
it is longer than the Andrew Jackson Jihad folk punk
Well,
25-minute excerpt.
that's all right. I don't mind that.
It'll
I'll
be an
make time
hour.
for it.
Yeah.
Um, so um, anything else you want to say about anything here?
Bortles will start a game next year for the Los Angeles Rams.
It could happen. I'm not ruling it out. Um, so oh, by the way, I don't think we mentioned this last time, but I wanted to bring it up this time that you had said to me through text that if Nick Foles takes the Jaguars to the AFC Championship, what was your promise that you made?
I will buy the jersey for every single future starter starting quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. No matter who it is, if they start a game, I'll buy it.
So, to give you perspective, if you had made this promise when Bortles took them to the AFC Championship, you would now own a Cody Kessler jersey.
Yes, this is
Okay.
correct.
See that to me that seems like a potentially expensive uh, risk that you're taking.
I think that I will max out at 3 jerseys a season. Uh because if it becomes like a Browns situation,
Right.
But I mean, I think that on average it'll be like $70 a
Well,
season. 70,
um,
$100. That's
I my suggestion was that if um, if Nick Foles fails terribly, which I don't think will happen, I think he'll do well. But if it turns out horribly and Nick Foles is like done in a season or two,
yeah.
um, I think you should turn that Bortles jersey that you have into the Browns jersey that the infamous Browns jersey with all the quarterback names on it.
Oh no. I don't know if I want to yeah, I don't want to ruin that jersey at this point. I love that jersey too much. And I will still wear
Anyway,
it for every single game.
oh, I also wanted to add, I my condolences to our friend Kyle, or well, my friend Kyle. You've never met him, who listens to our
He
podcast
does.
because he is probably the biggest Randall Cobb fan in the world,
Ha.
and yeah, it's gonna be a rough time for him seeing
Godspeed
seeing Randall Cobb play
in
for a different
blue
team.
and silver.
I think Kyle has had Randall Cobb in fantasy. He's like overdrafted him every year that I've had him in my league. So
Oh man.
I I feel for you, Kyle. I know it's tough, but I think you'll get through it. So anyway, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't got anything else to say. I think I've said my closure.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll
Well
see you
then,
next time.
yep. We'll see you guys next time. I've been Han Solo and he's been Chewbacca, apparently.
Oh. All right. All right.